Hello and welcome to SAR Histories, where on the channel today we will be visiting the unstately home, Calke Abbey. Calke Abbey has a long and varied history which dates back to the 12th century when Calke was a small religious community. The first known monastic settlement at Calke was in the early 12th century, when Calke Priory was founded around 1115. This priory was dedicated to St Giles and would have stood where the house is today. The independence of Calke Priory was short-lived, as by 1172 it was part of the nearby Repton Priory. Following the dissolution of the monasteries between 1536 and 1540, the land was sold and leased a number of times, before Henry Harper purchased the estate in 1622 for a sum of £5,350. From then on, a member of the Harper family would live at Calke Abbey until 1991. Despite the great wealth of the Harper family, they were not immune to changes in the outside world. Agricultural depression mixed with high levels of taxation were followed by the Second World War, and the family's wealth dwindled. In an effort to save money, whole rooms of the house were shut down and left to decay. The campaign to save Calke in the 1980s was hard fought, with the estate being described as being mismanaged by a family who had retreated from the outside world. The National Trust acquired Calke in 1985 when the house was on the brink of collapse. Today, the estate is kept in this controlled state of deterioration for all to see this moment in history. The interior of Calke Abbey reflects the early 18th century Baroque style and the alterations undertaken by the generations of the Harper crews that followed. As you look around, it is easy to see the deterioration. Many of the walls are cracked, the ceilings the same as the walls, also with stains where water had once leaked. In most rooms you will see peeling wallpaper, flaking paint and fraying textiles, but this is part of the complex conservation plan. Though the question for the future will be, will there be a time when the National Trust will have to restore Calke rather than conserve it like the day it was found? The state bed was found wrapped in tissue paper in wooden boxes in a small closet on the first floor. Its existence was known about, though it had never before been erected in the house. The textiles are of high quality and date from the early 18th century. How this bed came to Calke is unknown, though a theory is that it was a second-hand royal bed given as a wedding present in the later part of the 18th century. But this theory is, as yet, unsubstantiated by documentary evidence. Important items of silver are on display also, including silver gilt racing cups and a massive silver gilt wine fountain by the celebrated goldsmith Paul de la Mere, made in 1719. The kitchen became a symbol for the estate's romantic decay and has largely been unused since Sir Vaughan's death in 1924. The central table was piled high with rusting tools that have now been removed. Though much of the house is run down, it is still possible to see a glimpse of Calke's elegant past, a time of its wealth and grandeur. Many fine paintings are hung on the walls, and each tells its own tale and are captivating to look at. Along with the paintings is a natural history collection. Sir Vaughan gathered a large collection of eggs, shells, butterflies, insects and grasses. Like many Victorian collectors, he sought rare and unique items. Today we only see half of his collection, as Vaughan's daughter Hilda sold off the other half in 1925 to meet capital taxes after his death. We can only imagine how the house may have looked with double the number of specimens. Below stairs are the servants' rooms, including the scullery, lamp room, wash house and laundry, all laying abandoned. The central table where 30 servants once ate now sits empty. The usual way for the servants to leave the house was via an underground tunnel, provided in the early 19th century for moving beer barrels from the brew house to the cellar. The brick tunnel sustains an almost flat arch for 300 yards from the courtyard to the brew house. For me, this area was a first, and I find it absolutely fascinating to explore. The tunnel leads you to the brew house, which is in a near full working state, and you can almost still smell the hops as the beer fermented. Although there have been stables on the site since Tudor times, the current brick building was built between 1712 and 1716 and designed by the Burton-upon-Trent architect William Giles. When they were in use, the stables provided accommodation for riding and carriage horses on the ground floor, with the upper floor for the grooms and coachmen. Behind the stable block is another outer yard known as the smithy yard. It was built as an extension to the stables in the early 19th century. It is in this yard that you will find the blacksmiths, a fowl house, piggery, cart sheds, slaughterhouse, as well as a threshing barn, which is now the restaurant. Many of these sheds are open for you to look in, and you can see many carriages. There are 12 carriages at court, and each is placed where they would have been used. Most still have their original paintwork, fixtures and fittings, and are fascinating to look at. The church of St Giles stands on the hill opposite the south front of the house. It dates from 1827 to 29 and is a remodelling of an earlier building. The simple nave and chancel reflects the form of the earlier church, and the tower over the western entrance is a striking addition. Evidence points to an Elizabethan building preceding the current one, probably erected by William Wensley between 1575 and 1585. This fine monument is to the memory of Sir John Harper and his wife, Lady Catherine Harper. It cost their son rather more than the £150 Catherine stipulated should be spent on a plain monument. The church has only recently opened again, and it was great to get inside and have a look around. There are many old graves in the churchyard, with a good number being from the Harper family. The graveyard is easy to explore and is fascinating to look upon the older headstones. My favourite was this one, as it was erected in the memory of a servant who had been in service at court for 3 generations and was paid for by John Harper Crewe. There are benches here, and it is a quiet spot if you're looking to get away from the hustle and bustle of the house. The gardens were created in the late 18th century. Today there are a great many flowers on show, and what I like most is that they are all labelled. The kitchen garden had a functional purpose to feed the household, and even today grows a variety of herbs and vegetables. Behind the orangery is a series of rooms including the gardener's beaufry, the head gardener's office, a pony shed and several stove houses which heated the orangery. These rooms are great to explore and offer amazing insight into country life. It is like the workers have knocked off for the day and will return in the morning. On the north side of the walled gardens are the back sheds. Here you'll find the mushroom house, potting shed and the boiler house. This is a Robin Hood boiler made by the Beeston Boiler Company of Nottingham. Overlooking the pond is the ice house. This bleak building now stands empty of ice, but is no less interesting when exploring Cork's past. Ice was stored here throughout the year and would have been collected from the pond in winter and used for chilling perishable goods and desserts, much like we do today. The Deer Park today extends to 67 acres and was expanded from its Tudor boundaries during the late 18th century. The fallow deer are descendants from the wild stock that were caught in the 1970s. The red deer were brought in from other herds. Surrounding the house and walled garden are the pleasure grounds. Today they consist of grassland and an extensive woodland shrubbery. The grotto was designed by Samuel Brown of Derby in 1809. Though it was later modified. Grottos like this were particularly fashionable in the 18th century as shady places for retreat and reflection. I really enjoy visiting Calke Abbey as it offers something unique that other country houses lack. The character of Calke shows of a house in decline, and it is like a photograph frozen in time. The National Trust have done a fantastic job here, and if you have never been, I highly recommend a visit as there is so much to see. I have been a few times now, and each time I visit I see something new. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.